Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome back to more OCD. As I get it correct, I have my three therapy dogs with me. 1, 2, and 3. I have my book, and I have me. So let's go, shall we? So let's get this a bit. That's better. A bit less restrictive. Now, let's see. If you remember, we're talking about the implications of OCD for the 4 characters that had appeared in this book. And now we're on to Jeremy. So let's begin, shall we? Jeremy started to think about what it really meant to live according to the rules his fear dictated. He was already spending hours a day trying to work out what the thoughts meant. But when he considered it, he realised that there was no end to that, as he would never feel safe or sure enough. Now this is something I can definitely relate to. It made him feel very sad to think that it meant he would not really be able to be around his daughter. When he came to think about Theory B, it was hard to see the problem being worry as a real alternative, as he was so used to thinking about the problem as one of potential danger. However, if he tried on Theory B for size and thought about what it would mean if it were true, he came up with a set of principles that were in essence the opposite of what he was doing. If the problem really was worry, then worrying about it could obviously only make it worse, like digging to get out of a hole. What he needed to do was to stop taking his thoughts so seriously and stop trying to work them out. It would also mean that he was safe to do whatever was required, and if he continued to do that, he would have more time for his wife and baby and be a better father and husband. Now, you got some theories, I'll show you. Hopefully you can kind of see that. I'm going to read through them, but I'll show you anyway. So let's go over Jeremy's problem, shall we? Theory A says his problem is that he might harm a child. Theory B says the problem is that I worry I will harm a child. Now, we've been through this before, but I want to go over again. So in this case, we have Jeremy, who wants to be there for his daughter, but he's worried about doing something bad for no reason. He's just worried that he might just one day do it. Of course, that causes stress and anxiety, as it would, because, nobody wants to harm someone they love. But the problem is, for Jeremy, he doesn't want to do these things. The thought has just entered his head for no reason. And so the fear, really what's causing the problem is not that he might hurt his child, it's that he's worried he will. It's the worry that's causing the problem. He has no intent to do a bad thing, but the thought that he might just do it anyway causes problems. I hope I'm being clear on this. But let's go back, shall we? Theory A. The problem is that Jeremy might harm a child. But if this is true, what does Jeremy need to do? Jeremy needs to monitor himself for signs of going mad or moral slipping. He needs to avoid coffee, alcohol, and to stay in control. No substances, such as alcohol or caffeine. Personally, I'd add sugar to that list too, because sugar can make us do weird things. Really can. And thirdly, Jeremy must get his wife to look after the child. He must avoid his child and other children at all costs. You with me so far? But what if we follow these rules? Or if we always go through with them? What if it never stops? What will happen? Jeremy will never be safe. Jeremy will feel very sad because his daughter will not know who he is. And let's face it, if you never saw a parent, I'm sure there's someone watching or listening to this who can relate. If you had a parent who you never saw and you found out they just ignored you for 30 odd years or whatever, and you saw them and they said, well, the reason I was never there was because I was worried I might do something bad. And you say, what? And they say, well, I never wanted to do bad things, but I had this intrusive thought. And you'll probably just give them this look. And you'll be like, dude, what the frick? Do you really want that? Do I want that? It's funny, really, because I'm going to talk about something personal here. I'm 40 years old. I've never really made it in life. Never really matured. I'm still a man-child, essentially. Much as I try to get past that, it's like I can't. There's always this fear that I won't, and I kind of feel for Jeremy here. Because I've always worried that if I had a kid, I'd be a terrible parent. I don't fear I'd harm a child. I fear that my incompetence would lead to harm if I ever had a child. It's like, sometimes I struggle with things. Sometimes I forget things, you know. Sometimes I put a pizza in the oven and forget it's there. I'll check on it, I'll say 10 minutes, and I'll think, nah, it needs 5 more minutes. And then I won't think about it for another, say, 15 minutes. At which point it's overcooked and ruined. Part of me does worry that if I ever had a child, I would lose my concentration for a split second and they could, you know, have an accident that causes them to die. You know? It's a scary thought. I feel for Jeremy here. I mean, sometimes I say I don't relate to thoughts, because sometimes I don't, but other times I do, and I'm just, you know, I just don't want to say anything. Because there's still this shame and stigma attached to it all. And I'll be honest with you, it's scary. It really is scary. Because part of me would love to have a child, you know? Don't know if anyone watches Bob's Burgers, because they just done an episode where they go back in time and you see the birth of their first kid, and there's this bit where Bob says, he's only something, I can't remember exactly what it is, where he says is, I was scared of having a child until now, but now I can't be scared. I just need to be there. Something like that, anyway, he says to his first child. And it resonated with me a little bit, because it's like, the stress, the anxiety, the fear of being a bad parent is there for everyone. And I get that. But when you have a kid, you can't afford to have those fears, you know? It's like, if you constantly worry that you'll be a bad parent, you probably will be a bad parent. Okay? Sorry, had an itch. Why I bit it, I don't know. But I feel for Jeremy, yeah, because he's worried about being a crap parent, and that fear is going to turn him into one. So up until now, he was probably doing okay. But now, no. Now he is a crap parent. Everything changes when you have a child. And I know some of you watching this who will probably have families. Probably have children of your own. If you do, let me know in the comments. Does the fear of a crap parent get you, or do you just, you know, get on with it? Let me know. Right, back to the book. Excuse me. Let's go back to Theory B. Theory B is the problem that I worry I might harm a child. But if this is true, what do I need to do? Firstly, I need to ignore these thoughts. Excuse me. Nose itching. I need to treat my worries as worries, not as signs. My worries are just that, worries. I need to spend more time with the baby, even after drinking coffee. And I need to stop questioning my damn self. All valid thoughts. And what will happen if we keep on this path? What happens if we keep to the path of Theory B? We will get to spend time with the baby and wife and enjoy being a good parent, uncle, relative, etc., etc. So here we have it. As granted, this is very easy to say, I will admit, but sometimes we just got to try and stop worrying, you know? our worries are literally just that, worries. They're not facts, they're just fears. I know nothing is impossible, but it's damn unlikely. On with the book. Jeremy thought about what Theory A and B said about him as a person. When he reflected on this, one thing was completely clear to him in all the muddle of his thoughts. He truly wanted to be a good person and play a full role in his family. It made sense that all his rumination and avoidance was designed to protect others, which only a caring and sensitive person would do. It was also what others had said about him on many occasions, despite his own fears. And that is the end of Jeremy's thoughts. And now we're back to Johnson. This is admittedly one I can't really relate to as much because I'm not a particularly religious person. Unless bad things happen to me, then I'm convinced that God is punishing me for some unknown reason. Why, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm woke. I don't freaking know. Anyway, on with it, shall we? Implications for Johnson's religious OCD. Johnson thought about his problem with having unwanted thoughts about his religion. He wrote down his theory A. Sorry, just seen that, bro. Let's start again, shall we? He wrote down his theory A, what he felt he needed to do when he was upset and anxious. When OCD was telling him that he was a blasphemer. Or was it blasphemer? Who would be condemned. He realised that trying to avoid having the thoughts had been very unhelpful. Well, obviously. This made him feel very sad. When he thought about his theory B, however, as a problem of anxiety and worry, he understood that he did not need to try to avoid triggers or the thoughts themselves, as the intrusive thoughts were just that. They were thoughts. He realised it was counterproductive to monitor his thoughts and his body. This made him more anxious and more likely to experience intrusive thoughts. Johnson felt optimistic when he considered what life would be like for him in the future when he lived his life with Theory B. He'd be free to enjoy his faith in a way consistent with how he really was as a person. So let's go over this, shall we? What does Theory A say for Johnson? Theory A says, the problem is that my thoughts are blasphemous, and I will be condemned for them. And if this is true, what does Johnson need to do? He needs to push the thoughts out of his mind. Admittedly easier said than done. He needs to look out for the thoughts. He needs to atone for them at every single opportunity. And he also needs to avoid situations where thoughts can be triggered. He also needs to stay away from church because, he doesn't want to burst into flames or anything. And if he keeps following these rules, what will happen? He'll need to do more praying and avoiding. This will take over his entire friggin' life. And what does this say about Johnson? Says he's a bad person. Nothing more, nothing less. Just a bad person. But what about Theory B? Theory B says the problem is that the thoughts are blasphemous. The problem is the worrying. Johnson worries his thoughts are blasphemous, and he's worried he'll be condemned for them. And if this is true, however, what does he need to do? First of all, he needs to ignore said thoughts. Bad thoughts may pop into our minds, but we don't have to act on them. It's always worth remembering that, people. If you do get bad thoughts, I know it's easier than said than done, but try not to think about them. Because you can be a good person. You don't have to act on those thoughts. As I've said before, people, okay? You cannot control the thoughts pop in your head, but you can control your actions. Okay? You don't choose to have a violent thought, but you can choose to be violent. Okay? One does not need to become the other. And having that thought does not make you a bad person. What makes you a bad person is actually carrying out those intrusive thoughts and doing the bad thing. Whatever those bad things may be. So just remember that, alright? Let's carry on. Johnson needs to monitor his thoughts. Johnson should not monitor his thoughts. As I said before, don't do that, people, okay? He needs to get to church and study the Bible regardless of what the thoughts are. And he cannot avoid anywhere, anything or anybody. He has to live his life. But what will happen if he keeps following these rules? If he keeps following these rules, he will have a closer relationship with God and his church. He'll also be able to talk to other people about his problems. So he'll be able to say, I had these intrusive thoughts, I sometimes do. It's only natural and I choose not to act upon them. So I'm certain that Johnson is a decent person. And what does this say about Johnson as a whole? It says that he is religious. He is a good person. He takes his morals very seriously. And that is the story of Johnson, people. I hope you learned something. So let's carry on with the book, shall we? Before I get too dangled down on my own damn thoughts. While it is important to think about the two theories and which applies best, we don't want to spend a great deal of time trying to disprove theory A. Imagine if Suze, who had a contamination fears, got tempted into this kind of thinking. Perhaps it is I who is too anxious about dirt germs. I'll go and look up on the internet how likely it really is that I'll die from salmonella, and I'll investigate how long it stays live on your hands so I know when it is safe to touch other things. I'll ask everyone I know how often they wash their hands. Once I know this, I'll wash my hands a bit more than them, to be on the safe side. That's not bad thinking. Not bad at all. So can you see what the problem might be with this? Once Sue starts looking on the internet, she'll find all sorts of information that will furnish her with various contradictory facts. That is very true. And this will, it says may in the book, but let's say it will increase her uncertainty and set up a whole new set of obsessional rules that might be quicker, but will still be generated from a belief about being responsible for preventing harm. Asking everyone she knows how often they wash their hands could end up being a form of reassurance. She has in mind that there is a right answer. That is very true. And let's say we've all done stuff like this before, people. We all have. It can be useful to ask other people about their behaviour, for example, how often they wash their hands, if you have lost track of what is normal or typical. Again, pretty normal, nothing to worry about. Some people do wash their hands freely, others might only do so a few times a day. Now this is interesting, because I've seen people in public toilets come out of the toilet after doing number 2. Actually, you know what? Forget that. I'm going to call it what it is. Let's call this. They've done a poo. We can say that on YouTube, can't we? Can't we? Yes, we can. They've gone in the toilet. They've done number 2. I've seen them come out the cubicles. And they do not even, and some of those people do not even bother to wash their damn hands. And I'll tell you something now, if you thought about that, the more you think about it, the more you realise it probably applies to people you know. Sometimes that person who doesn't wash their hands is someone you know and love very closely. Obviously, you're better off not knowing, but if you do catch someone you know doing that, tell them to wash their damn hands with soap. Not that I wish to put you over the edge, but that's the sort of thing that can trigger contamination OCD. Now, where was I? Here we go. Some people do wash their hands frequently. Other people might only do so a few times a day. The important information to gain from a survey of other people's behaviours is to establish a flexible approach. The goal is to be able to not wash your hands even if you prefer at other times. For example, if you're at home, you may prefer to wash your hands before preparing food. Yes, I'd recommend doing so. However, if you're out camping or having a picnic, this might not be possible. The goal is to be able to get on with eating in these circumstances and to take the risk that you might pick up a bug. Remember the insurance metaphor we described in chapter 4? You may feel like the compulsions are protecting you from something terrible happening. This is a very nice idea. The cost of carrying them out effectively enough is very high. It's a bit like buying a house insurance policy that protects against everything, but costs £1 million per year, So the question is, how much are you really paying to carry out your OCD compulsions? Often, obsessional concerns include negative consequences in the longer term, i.e. not doing your rituals today could lead to a family member having an accident at any point in the future. This is when it is useful to build up evidence for Theory B. You can never be sure that nothing bad will ever happen. What we do know is that making a constant effort to prevent something bad happening inevitably increases your preoccupation with and belief in Theory A. This also shows something else important, that it is possible to care too much. We've noticed over the years that most people with OCD care too much for their own good, but are reluctant to give this up in case it results in them being responsible for harm to themselves or other people. Fortunately, it is possible to change this and escape from the trap which is OCD, while still being a caring person. The more you go about your life acting as if Theory B is true, the more you'll find out how the world really works without OCD. Theory A of OCD has been telling you for a long time that terrible things will happen. But what we do know is that Theory B predicts that when you stop doing the safety-seeking behaviour and stop avoiding anything, your thoughts will become less troubling. Your feelings of anxiety will subside, and you'll start to enjoy life a great deal more. Now we have a key idea here, and I'm going to read it. OCD says the problem is danger, and you must spend all your time preventing it. Which I think is valid. However, OCD is a problem of worry and danger. The biggest problem is not that it could happen, it's that you worry about it. And that in turn will lead to other problems. Now there's a bit here where it says fill in Theory A and Theory B for your problems on the table on 276. So let's quickly have a look at 276, shall we? Where are we? 27. But no, we're near the end of the book here. So I'll show you. I do, however, recommend you buy this book yourself, people. But a good read through can help you. So you have these books where you have Theory A and Theory B, and you have to write it all down. Now I'm gonna need some time to prepare this one, okay? So we're gonna skip this bit, all right, for now. And if I remember, I'll come back to it, hopefully. Actually, what I'm going to do is, as we're coming to the end of this little chapter bit, I'm going to fill this in my own spare time and come up with my own theories and stuff. I may show you, I may not. I may talk about it, I may not. Powerfully, it depends on whether I have the guts to actually share my deepest insecurities with you, and also a matter of if I remember to do so. But I'm going to leave it here tonight. Let's get on, because it's quite late and the video is coming up past the train. I did say I wasn't going to keep these videos too long. So until next time, I'm James. This is Jean-Paul Van Damme. This is Jennifer Lopez. And this big fella is Slobodan Milosevic. Those are my therapy dogs, and they do a great job of therapy. Personally, I recommend getting your own therapy dog. Obviously, a live dog, an actual living, breathing dog, is not for everyone. So if you can't look after one, or you don't think you're able to, get a plushie. Get one like this. They don't require a lot of care. They just need to be kept clean and away from the elements. Another good thing is you can give them whatever name you want, and you can describe them. You can also give them whatever personality you like. Isn't that right, Jean-Paul Van Damme? That is correct. You can give me any personality you want. You're weird, James. I know. Until next time, I'm James. You've met my therapy dogs. Bye.